to illuminate the often unseen mental health challenges faced by first responders, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, and 911 dispatchers. By sharing their stories, fostering understanding, and promoting resources for support and healing. We aim to break down stigma, advocate for improved mental health services within the first responder community, and inspire hope and resilience. This is the Weight We Carry podcast.
What's going on, guys? It's Bart with Weight We Carry podcast, and today we have a very special guest, old friend of mine, Richie Nye, firefighter EMT. What's going on, brother? How are you?
What's going on, man? I'm doing good. Doing real good.
If you would, let everyone know who we're talking to and give yourself a brief introduction, okay?
Richie Nye. I'm currently a firefighter EMT with the Prince George's County Fire and EMS Department, currently stationed in Capitol Heights. I've been there for almost 8 years now. I got started in the fire service, EMS, when I was 16 in Ross and McCandless, and kind of just started working my way to chasing my dream of becoming a paid fireman.
Heck yeah. I think a lot of the people that start out as volunteers, that's kind of the dream. We really want to get into a paid position, you know?
Yeah, well, that was funny. Like, one of the things that my mom always joked around with me about when I was a kid, she always asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up, and she said that at a young age it was to be a paid fireman and to be like my dad. And then one of the funnier parts of that too, she was like, it was I wanted to grow up be like my dad, and then I was gonna marry her, and I was like, well, obviously one of those can only come true. So,
It's
life of
always
a
good to
4-year-old,
find someone that's like your mother, though. You know, that's what we always tell Logan. Find someone that's just like mommy, man. Then you'll be good. All right, brother, let's start at the beginning. Tell us about your early years and what was it like growing up in a firefighter family?
That's pretty much all I really know or remember. From a young age, I was always in a firehouse, it felt like. The guys there that were firemen with my dad, I looked up to. I called them my uncles. And where my dad lived at was right across the street from Highland Fire Department in McCandless. And so, at a young age, I remember going to calls with him, or if I was staying at my grand's house, I would always hear them leaving, and I would always be at the window or on the sidewalk and watching them go. So as I was getting older, that's all I ever thought of and done and wanted to do was to be a fireman. And I kind of joke about it. It's kind of like the family business. My dad's been doing it since he was 14, and his father was a fireman. So, being the third generation of the family is always something I wanted to do. And I always looking back now too, I would try to just try to absorb like the things that I learned. There were some things I remember going to trainings and stuff like that they let me do. And I still remember doing that stuff now, you know, whether it was tying the simple knots or letting me force a door or whatever. I still remember the stuff that they taught me back then now, which is crazy.
That's pretty awesome, though. You know, it's that
Yeah.
legacy that you'll always be able to remember, growing up in that type of environment and then carrying it on into your profession now, man. What a cool
Right.
thing to be able to do.
Yeah. And it was even school life, I didn't care about going to the most prestigious college or playing sports in college. In high school, I played lacrosse. In middle school, and we were on, a couple championship teams and stuff like that. And I loved that. I loved being on that team and playing that game. But afterwards, it wasn't oh, I want to go here to play lacrosse in college. It was, I'm going to go here so I could learn and be a fireman and get a job.
So you always knew you wanted to be a firefighter. Can you describe that passion and how it shaped your life from a young age?
I think it's just, you see, it's funny, you know, growing up as a kid and watching my father and him go to calls and go to fires and doing whatever, all the other calls that they go to. I feel like he went to a lot more fires when I was a kid than I do now. It's kind of weird. And but it was just I wanted to feel that adrenaline rush. I wanted that. But then at the flip side of it, I also wanted to be able to help people. And I feel like that was one of the big things too was knowing that I was gonna be able to help somebody on their worst day of their life.
Like you said, you did play some lacrosse and played some hockey back in your high school and middle school days. It played a big role in your life. And did those experiences help prepare you for the physical and mental demands of public safety?
Sure. I mean, lacrosse, just running around, cardiovascular fitness, especially nowadays with the heart attacks being the leading cause of firefighter fatalities and firefighter issues, just running around on the field for,
Mhm.
30 minutes, a day and then doing strength training definitely helped shape me into being able to perform on the fire ground. Um, And then with the mental aspect, if you're playing a really tough team and stuff like that, that gives you that kind of mental toughness to be able to persevere through it. And that, we deal with tough stuff all the time, whether we know it or not, and being able to have that mental toughness to get through it, that definitely helped.
I think probably with the
And to be able to, yeah, and to be able to just rely on your teammates. You're there with a team, not just by yourself.
that's what I was just about to say. The team aspect of it, being coachable is a biggie, and then having the
Right.
teamwork environment that gets you through the fire ground also.
Yeah. And I think that was like one of some things I kind of did struggle with going from, you know, where I was a volunteer and a career firefighter in Pittsburgh, right outside of Pittsburgh, for 8, 9 years, and then starting all over with a major career department. It wasn't that the coachability was hard, it was hard because the learning that way of doing things and understanding why, because I knew one way so long. So it was an eye opener. So like the first like couple months was tough in the aspect of like, why am I learning it this way? Because I've done it this way before. But then it's like the ways that I learn, I'm like, I wish I would have learned these, 10 years ago.
Okay. Anxiety and depression became a challenge for you in your teenage years. How did it affect your school experience and your early involvement in the fire service?
Uh, so growing up, I never really knew anything about it. And when I've heard things about like depression or anxiety, it was just like this. Oh my gosh, like, I never wanna have that type deal. But I think before the stigma behind it was like this seriously bad thing, and if you have it, the outcome's not gonna look good
Yeah.
for you type deal. That was always, like, the way I took it, and then when I started dealing with that, probably, late middle school, early high school years, uh, it was definitely a struggle. But then realizing and seeing that there's ways to get help, whether it's through therapy, medication, or whichever means you found or I found was, it's okay to have these problems. It's just knowing how to work through them. So anxiety was definitely one of the biggest one, and it affected me in school because, I feel like there's days where I could sit down and I could read my notes or whatever, and then the next day I would go to that test and I would, I like in my head I'd be like, I'm ready to go. I know this stuff. My friends or my parents, quiz me on it, and then it'd be like I barely passed it or I failed it, and I'm like, what the heck? Like
Yeah.
why? Like I know this stuff, and here I was just, the anxiety of that, you know, going into it, and then how it affected me outside of just that. It was definitely a challenge. And it made it hard. It made it hard to wanna learn, it made it hard to wanna go to school sometimes, and, having those issues just wasn't fun. Did not make school enjoyable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So mental health wasn't always openly discussed, as we well know, especially in public safety. Do you feel supported when you were first struggling, or was it something that you tried to manage on your own and keep it under wraps?
So when my parents noticed that I was having issues the first time, they took me to a therapist and stuff like that, and that was, like, when I was in probably middle school, end of middle school, early high school. Um, it was like winter time, and for me, summertime is my months. And so that I remember hearing the doctors say you kind of have like the winter blues.
Mhm.
You know, you got to find things in the wintertime to keep you active. Like I would come home from school instead of doing homework or whatnot, I would just go to sleep or just not do anything. I would just kind of be like a couch potato.
Yeah.
And I was struggling in school because I wasn't doing what needed to be done. You know, I wasn't doing my homework, I wasn't doing papers, or I was kind of half-assing everything with school type deal. So when my parents did take me to them, then I kind of found out some things too that I was dealing with and I didn't know how to deal with. That helped me. And then they put me on medications and it helped. And then I remember like coming into high school, I stopped taking them because it wasn't as bad, I felt like. So, and I was able to kind of just manage those emotions on my own.
For me, it was, you obviously know what happened to me a few years ago, but I think there was
Right.
some underlying depression that I never took care of, you know, as a younger adult. And then it just got even worse, after I got out of the hospital and I just kept it under wraps. And the environment, you get in with those old school EMTs and paramedics and they're like, just suck it up. And that
Right.
that
Yeah.
environment. And it was
Yeah.
tough.
When you just go home, you know, have a couple beers, relax, take a nap, you'll be good.
Yeah. And I just kept it under wraps, man. And
Yeah.
finally I reached
And that
out.
was, yeah, I mean, and that was the biggest thing was, you know, it wasn't my reach out was, I think, was me just not doing well in school. And when I went to talk to a therapist, and I remember this like clear as day. When I was a kid, before I joined the fire service, I used to have like night terrors or nightmares. And it was my dad and his two friends dying in a fire.
Mm.
But the dream was them showing me the house that they were in, that they died in. And it was a white house with a concrete porch and stoop. And then they showed me like what happened type deal. But then the day I joined the fire service, I never had that dream again. And I remember talking about that. It was one of the most, like, scary things about it, was, you know, dealing with that and not being able to talk about it.
Yeah.
I was afraid to talk about it. I was afraid to tell my dad about it or my mom because I didn't want them to feel bad or sad or worried, you know, until I started talking to a therapist, and the therapist was like, "You need to say this to your dad." And I remember telling him. And it is crazy because like, that was so long ago, but I remember that, like, so well. Like, it's wild.
It's such you know, for a young brain to be able to even process something like that, you know,
Right,
and then be able to say that or admit that to your father, that would be tough, man, I'm sure.
right. Especially for, you know, and I think it's funny, like, we people think it's like I don't say cliche, but like, you know, when we walk out the door from our family or from our friends or whatnot, that might be the last time we see them. And I think for me, just understanding the fire service so young at an age, and sometimes I knew that, if my dad walked out that door, that might be the last time I saw him,
Yeah.
type deal. And it was crazy. And I think that's where some of that stems from. And then when I got into it, it was just weird. It just stopped. It was like the wildest thing ever.
It is.
It's funny how brains work.
Yeah.
It's like, why?
Isn't it scary how the brains work? Yeah, that's what I
It
say, I'm
is
like,
it's
"Man,
scary.
this."
Like, but then like I still have that vivid, like, yep, let me go to that file in your brain and pull that out just to make sure you remember, like, it is crazy.
Public safety brains.
I know. And I think another big thing too was, um was 9/11 was a very big thing into, why I wanted to be a fireman too. And just watching those guys, you look up at 2 towers that are burning after 2 planes just went into them, and they're like, "Okay, it's just another job,
Without
we gotta
hesitation.
go." Without hesitation, they did it,
Yep,
and it's just like, they held true to their oath.
you sure did. So, Richie, Your journey's taken you through several fire departments and public safety roles. How did those experiences shape your perspective on mental health in the profession?
Um, so I think the biggest change and challenge into looking at mental health as a role as just a firefighter was when I became a line officer. Um, when I became a captain, I was a lieutenant, a captain, and a deputy chief at Berkeley when I was a member there. And seeing and then knowing the struggles that I've had personally and seeing people go through them as one of their like leaders or somebody that, they should be looking up to, trying to help them get through that. But also too, it felt weird when you get put into those roles and you're the one that's standing back watching everything happen, and then it's like, well, I want to be there because if this happens and I want to feel something. Like it was a very weird step back moment in the learning curve and a process that you have to be able to sit back and kind of let things happen and let the people do their jobs that they know how to do.
To be able to sit back, that's the hard part. Sit back and not
Right. Yeah.
not be in there with everyone else.
Yeah. I remember it was like the very first fire I was ever command of. It was like some small fire off of like Amity Road, and I backed the old Crown Vic up into the driveway across the street. And it's just like a small kitchen fire. And I was the first one there, and I remember the engine pulling up and they pulled the line and just watching them go in. But then it was like, okay, did you guys get the fire out yet? Like, why is this taking forever? Like sitting there, it just felt like everything was in slow motion. And it was like, before it was like, if I was a fireman, it felt like, the fire went out so fast that I couldn't like take it in or, like see what was going on around us or something like that. But, sitting in that command role and watching them do it, and you're just like, oh my gosh, why is this happening so slow? Just and not because they were doing a bad job, just because it was just like
Different
the way
position.
we were yeah, just that position, it was wild.
That's what you hear on good fires. If you're dispatching fires, you can tell if they're out and about or if they're sitting in a command vehicle. You know, you can
Right.
tell those
Yeah.
chiefs. You're like they're out walking around. That's what they're doing. Or
Right.
sometimes they'll
Yeah.
just seclude themselves in the command vehicle and
Yeah.
nice, calm, and collected. But that would be a tough flip. And like you said, just being a firefighter, interior firefighter, going in and then changing your to the command structure to the chief's role, then having to sit back and not be in there doing. But
Right. And that was a challenge because I became a line officer very young. I think I was maybe like 21, 22 years old.
yeah,
And, only having 3.5, 4 years as a backstep fireman, and then going into that role, and then all of a sudden being like, "Hey, you're the duty chief this week, or, can you help cover?" And then you get that, and you're like, "Oh no."
did I learn everything?
But right. And that was the thing, though. I had some very, very, very good people around me that taught me how to be good, how to do things.
Yeah,
And I will forever be indebted to those people that led me down the path up to where I'm at today and the things that I've learned and done, always be indebted to them.
I think we all do. Anyone in public safety, if you're in it for the long
Right.
haul, you better have
Yeah.
those people that you're like, yep, they made me a better provider, a better firefighter, whatever.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny because like when I got hired in PG, not to get like off topic, but like uh one of my old medic partners at Ross, he knows who he is. I don't want to drop names or anything like that. He was one of my he was one of my references for Ross and the background investigation. And he joked and he told the background investigator, I trust this guy with my drugs. Like if I needed help and I threw him keys to my drug box, and the lady was like, wait, what? Like you trust him with your drugs? And he's like, we're paramedics, and I'm a paramedic, and you know, we had a good working cohesion together where I trusted him, to be able to give me the right things at the right time. And like, it's hard to find like good EMTs like that sometimes, they kind of they don't understand like that cohesion with your medic,
Yeah.
especially if you have like a, especially if you rotate partners a lot. Luckily me and him were partners enough to where we had that working relationship and we were able to kind of know where each other were going and doing.
No words needed to be said.
Right. Exactly. But it made it fun, because like afterwards, you like if you had that hard call or you had that call where there's 900 things happening at one time and it was just taxing, and afterwards you're like, man, that was easy because we worked well together.
Yep. We
We
knew what
knew
we
what was
needed.
happening. Yeah.
I do miss the truck some days. Other days I'm like, no, I don't miss being on a truck. So Richie, throughout your career, you've been through a number of critical incidences. Are there any particular calls or moments that stand out as turning points for you?
Um so this question, I don't know. I'm gonna kind of just go into fine like or some broad details about it, but
Sure.
um I remember I was on an ambulance. I was with a medic partner, and we ran just a little lady complaining of leg pain. We get there, vitals are all fine. The family was actually firefighters from a different jurisdiction, and they actually did like all the work for us. I was like, what is happening here? Like they carried the stair chair, they carried her down the steps, and I remember like, well, my partner was like, "Hey, you good?" It's just like pain, vitals are good. I said, "Yeah, I got this." You never think twice about like something
Sure.
like that for as a BLS provider. Yeah, I got it. And on the way to the hospital, I remember like we hit a couple bumps in the road, typical bad roads, and she's like, "Oh, my leg hurts some." I was like, "All right, we're almost to the hospital. We'll get you there. Just keep that." I remember she kept taking the pulse ox off. I said, "Just keep that pulse ox on, just so I could just see what's going on and everything like that." Kept taking off, kept taking off, and I'm like, all right, we're almost there, like we're pulling into the hospital. And as we're getting out, she kind of like looked down and my partner was like, "Hey, are you okay?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine." And as soon as we rolled her right into the ER, she coded. And I'm like, what the heck? And I was like, well, literally, this was just leg pain. And now
Yeah.
she's coding. Like, and for me, it was like, what did I miss? What did I not see that caused this? And now after talking and, after that incident and going through everything and talking to the nurses and stuff like that, they're like, one, sounds like she had a pulmonary embolism. So
Yeah.
outlook of that was not going to be good at all. And they're like, those things just come out of nowhere. You can't predict it. You can't see it. You can't figure it out. It just happens. And they're like, unfortunately, it happened while you were while you were the tech of this patient. And I was like, what the heck? And I was like, to me, and I beat myself up pretty good over it because it was just like, what did I miss? And I remember, calling my old partner at Ross and then my old boss at Ross and being like, what did I miss something? Like, what did I do wrong? Like whatever. And to me, like, scared me because there was always like this stigma of like, you can always get in trouble for not taking somebody to the hospital or not providing the appropriate care. And that's what I was afraid of. I was afraid of losing things that I worked so hard for because I missed something. And it was hard to get through that and realizing that I really didn't miss anything. It was just a freak. It was just that time type
Yeah.
deal.
And it's what a lot of us providers either learn quickly or something really bad happens is, it's not up to you. It's not up to us.
Yeah. And that was the thing because my partner, me and her, we had a very good working relationship. Um, Same thing like I had. We kind of knew each other's next steps, and when we were on the unit together, we had a good time, and I mean, we ran a lot of calls. And when we had those bad calls, we just had a good working relationship, and we knew what each other's steps were, and it was like, did they miss something? Did I miss something? Did we both miss something? And it was just like, and it was just wild because then that changed. It made me fear riding the ambulance again because I thought it was going to happen again. Like, when was it going to happen again? And it made me like dread going to work sometimes, knowing that I was going to be the provider, and missing something like that, and it put a, like a wear and tear on me. It made me not want to ride an ambulance again.
That's where the anxiety that can definitely ramp up that
Uh,
anxiety and make it 10 times worse, for sure.
yeah, and that's where after that incident, and I was going through a couple of things. I had like a breakup with a girlfriend, and a couple other things happened. Luckily for me, I was able to reach out to somebody and and just talk to them from our peer support team at work,
Good.
and then get help.
So, Richie, losing your best friend and being there while the fire department worked on him was a deeply personal and difficult experience. How did that affect your mental health and your ability to separate work from personal life?
Yeah. That's actually his anniversary was the other day. It was 3 years. July 11th, 2022. Um, I was a little backstory behind it. I woke up and me and my friend we were going to go golf in our golf league, and he was also best friends with him. That's actually how I met him, was through him and through Justin. And he called me and said, "Hey, there's something going on at Butler's house. Sounds like there's a working code." And I was like, and at the time I was only living about 5 minutes away from his house. I was like, "What are you talking about?" And that did, like, it wasn't registering. I was like, "So are we golfing today, or what are we doing?" And he's like, "I think it's Butler." And I was like, "What?" I said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Are you sure it's not the neighbor?" Because he had an older neighbor next to him. And he's like, "I don't know. Let me call you back." And I remember sitting there in my room, and I'm like, "Butler? Like, why? Like, this doesn't make sense." And he called me back, and he's like, "I think it's Butler." I said, I'm gonna go over there." And I remember driving over there, and I pulled up, and Butler was a previous member of the Burtonsville Volunteer Fire Department, and he lived in their first two. The first two ambulance came from another first two over, but they knew who he was. And then when they heard it was a working code, everybody knew his address. And so when I pulled up, I saw the engine and I saw the truck and two medic units in the chase car and police there. I remember because I always drove we always drove through park our cars, and he had like this big yard, and it was like there was a bunch of like toys and crap in there, but and I remember pulling in, and a cop came up to me and was like, "Can I help you?" And I was like, What is happening?" I said, Where's Mike? Where's his mom?" And I just happened to look out back, and there was a couple guys from Burnsville with his mom, and from the career side. And I went back and I said, "Lori, what?" Actually, I think I called her mom. I was like, "What's going on?" And she's like, "It's Mike. He's dead." And I said, What are you talking about? What do you mean he's dead? Like, I just talked to him. Like, what are you talking about? And and then the captain from 15 pulled me aside, and I think I actually had a PGFD hat on, and he asked me if I worked for PG, and I said yeah. I said I told him where I was assigned at, and pulled me aside, told me what was going on, gave me like the background and everything, how they got to where they were at, and I said okay. I said, "What are we looking at?" And he's like, "We're kind of putting a little bit more into it. We're going a couple extra rounds. We're going to do some other stuff. Medical officers are here too, doing stuff." And I said, "All right." And I was like, "Can I go inside, see what's going on?" And he's like, Are you sure?" And I said, "Yeah." And I went inside, and they were working him. And I came back out, and his mom was trying to get back in there, and I was like, You gotta stay out here. You gotta stay out here." Yeah, they're working on him, and the captain came back out and said, "Hey, something's changing. We're going to try and transport him." I said, "All right." So I remember I pulled my car like through like the bushes into the back, and I was like, "Come on, Lori, let's go. Let's get in. We'll take you to the hospital." And then I just happened to look over, and I saw the Lucas come walking out, and medic carrying the Lucas, and I knew it. So I took her, brought a chair over, and we sat her down. And captain came over and pulled me aside first. Said they called it, and I said, "I appreciate it." Um, and we went over and we told Lori, and to watch mom scream that her son was dead in their kitchen. It was just hard. And I called Justin and I said, I think this time I went to the front of the house because the guys are walking out and I knew a couple of them. I told them thank you and for everything that they did. I remember just sitting in his front yard and I called my buddy Justin. I said, he's gone. I said, I called him. He's like, all right. He's like, I'll be there in 15 minutes. And yeah, it was the wildest. And the friend group started showing up and we're just trying to sit there and process it. And I'm with his mom and she's nervous and scared because she doesn't know what's going on. And police are asking her questions because he was so young. He was 35, I think, when he passed, and 36. And so they were just asking questions for their protocols to see what the next step is. And she's like refusing to answer. I'm like, Lori, it's just their job. And just answer the question. Like, just do this or do that. And it was just the hardest thing that you know, we run working codes all the time at work, and you know, you see families go through that, but then when it comes down to somebody that and have to try and process was just unreal. And I remember I called I called Andrea, she was still shift commander at work. I called the shift commander line, and and she answered and she's like, "What's up?" And I was just like, "Butler's dead." And I was just crying my eyes out. It's like, Butler's gone. She's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, Butler's gone. I said, I don't know what's going on. I said, I don't know how, why. I said, but he's gone. And yeah, that was hard. It was real hard. Somebody that, I was fortunate enough to know for since 2018. And, luckily, I was lucky enough to be friends with him and go over to his house almost every day and spend time with him and just have somebody like that. It was very hard losing. Yeah, it sucked. And mentally, it was like we don't know when our time's up, and there's things that we could do with our life that we can do to make better. And it was, to prolong that and be able to see different things and do stuff. And I just said to myself, I was like, I wish I wish he had those opportunities, but then it's like I want to do things in memory for him and stuff like that. Prolong. He was always happy that when I come over, he always joked with me, to pay fire ants here and stuff like that. But he knew I loved it, and he loved seeing his friends being able to do that job and stuff like that.
That you can always hold, though. That's how you always hold your friends and people that aren't here anymore. You remember those important, poignant moments.
Yeah, I had the fortunate to meet Mike actually a long time ago, before I actually even like really knew who he was. When Justin moved down to Maryland, and I rode at Burtonsville when they still had all their volunteers and live-ins there and stuff like that. I remember it was the first time I ever ran like a reported fire in like Maryland, and truck 15 was first due into PG County. And I remember going to this fire, and I remember sitting in the ladder truck, and Mike was driving, and I was like, I never felt a ladder truck go this fast in my life before. And I'm just like in the back of the truck, like holding on, and I'm like, oh my God. And they're like, yeah, that's Mike Butler for you. And then when I moved down here, and I lived with Justin for a while over at Brahms in Burnsville's first due. So, we would go over to his house every day, every other day, and we would work on stuff, fix our cars, drink beers together, jump in the pool, just shenanigans, like just
Best
always
friends,
having
man.
fun.
Best friends.
Yeah, yeah, and then like all the other friends would come over, so there'd be a whole bunch of us, bonfires, stuff like that. It's funny. It was a great time. But yeah, that um, afterwards when things started to settle down and the medical examiner showed up and they did their thing, all the friends were still there, and I took a picture of it. It was just like I was standing by my Jeep and it was still parked at the side of the house in the yard. And all of us were like had chairs out, and I think there was like 3 or 4 cases of beer around these chairs, and the guys are talking, and I just like stood back and I just took a picture of all of us standing in the yard. Like, for some reason, it just spoke to me of like, this might be one of the last time all the guys are together, unfortunately, in this circumstance, but it was just good to kind of just capture that moment of us. And every year on his anniversary, the group chat comes out, and I shared that picture with the guys. It was the first time I shared it with anybody, and showed them, and they were like, "Wow." And one of the guys was like, "I never knew you took that picture." And I just was like, "I never seen all the boys together, you know, just like this." Like, it was just a moment to kind of just capture. And yeah,
So, Richie, the
but
stigma around mental health can make it hard for first responders to ask for help. What was the turning point for you when you realized that you needed more support?
uh, so the first time I made contact with our peer support team, fortunately, my fire department and my union have a peer support team and group, and they do a phenomenal job. They have many people that are trained into peer support management and stuff like that, and have resources. They build a great resource list out. So the first time I made contact with them, and I remember like the person that I was gonna call was one of my instructors in the academy, and I remember like typing his phone number in and sitting here and be like, why am I typing this phone number in? Like, why am I calling him? I don't need, like, do I really need this? Do I really need to talk to him about this? Is this just a little blip in the path of life that I'm going to get over type deal? And I remember like I deleted it and I sat there, and then I typed it in again, and I'm like, and it was like one of those things, like, I don't want to, the stigma was like, I'm okay, like, I'll be fine, or, you just got to suck it up. You got to push through. You got to get through it. And then I eventually called him, and we talked, and he got me resources, and I followed through with them, and I started talking to somebody about different things, and just when you call a peer of somebody you work with in the fire department, and you're like, man, how are they gonna feel? Or you don't want to be that guy's like, oh, he's calling them because he's having a hard time, or about mental health, and all that stuff, and then like you call him, he's like, hey, I got you, brother, you know give me this information, I'm gonna help you. He's like, you could call me whenever you want, I'm here for you. Like, just to hear that, and hear that from somebody um that you looked up to while you were in the academy and stuff like that, was awesome. And then going through the process, and them helping, and them following up, and going through their steps and everything like that, it was very refreshing to know that that was there.
We all know that finding the right balance of therapy and medication isn't always easy. I know all too well.
Yeah. But same here.
What's been the biggest challenge in figuring that out and what works for you?
So the second time that I actually ended up going back and contacting the peer support team, I had a totally different thing happen to me. And it was outside of life. It wasn't fire department related. It wasn't it was just like I lost a sense of motivation with things that I was doing. And I was taking a couple fire department tests. And in the year prior, I passed the test with flying colors. Next year I come by, and I failed it 3 times. And I was like, why? Why am I failing this? Like, this is what I wanted. This is what I'm doing. I prepared for it. Um, like I'm like I should have been good. Like, whatever. And after that, I became very mm, just bitter and unmotivated. And I remember I put on like 10, 15 pounds. Um, I was just mad at the world and mad at myself. And I remember, you know, my mom telling me, she's like, you gotta lighten up on yourself about this and whatever. And then, so I was like, I hit a point where I was like, I need to talk to somebody again. And I went in and I found found a therapist, and they went through different tests with me, and they asked me like, "Yeah, have you ever been diagnosed with ADHD, ADD?" And I was like, "Never." And she's like, "So," and she started explaining the process to me. She's like, "I'm gonna try and," she's like, "We this is your main problem, ADD, and we want to try and we nip this, then the anxieties and that stuff should start following suit into being all right." So I remember getting on medication, and at the time I felt great, and then all of a sudden it just like switched on me, and it's like kind of stopped working, but then it put me into like these very bad mood swings, and like I would go back to her and be like, "This is happening, but then this is happening." She's like, "Well, we should try this and then that." And then, but then like when I would do that, it was, felt like I wasn't being listened to. And I was going through like these very hard crashes, and I was irritable and just mad and stuff like that. And she put me on another medication. Well, then when I did my own research, it actually contradicted the other one. So I was
Mm.
like, why is this happening? So, and it made me mad and upset. It was like, how can somebody do this, and not realize it? And then it was like, okay, I gotta find somebody else. I gotta, somebody that I feel like I could trust better. And I trust the process. I went with them. I told them what was going on. I told them this was happening. And I quit all those medications, just cold turkey. I stopped. I was like, I need to reset my body or something because something's not jiving right. And I told her that. And then, and within the first visit with her, she was like, she's like, she gave me that sense of trust to her, and was like, she listened to my issues with taking this medication and that one, and listened to my side effects and how it was affecting me. And we were able to fine tune and really get down to something that worked for me.
Awesome.
And it was trusting that process. Not every medication or every type of therapy is going to work for somebody, but it's trusting that process to be able to find that, to get back to being better.
So many first responders struggle with feeling like a burden when talking about their struggles. How did you work through that, and what advice would you give to someone who feels the same way?
Uh, it's funny how this job creates a feelings to all of us, and we have that unfortunate feeling of, we're going to be a burden on somebody, but you're not. It's being able to hit send on that phone number that you typed in 5 times
Yep.
to move forward, and it's okay. Just just do it. Talk to somebody. It's all right. And I wish I could remember this line in a show that I heard about seeing a therapist, and but the girl told her boyfriend that I'm gonna go talk to a therapist, and he's like, "Good." He's like, "Everybody needs to," I think he said, "Everybody needs to tune up their head every once in a while." And I was like, "That's like like, take that clip and just put it out there. Show it. It's okay to fine tune your head sometimes. It's okay to go and talk to somebody. You're not burdening them." Especially if it's a fellow firefighter, that we call our brothers and everything like that. Like, if you're struggling through some stuff and some crap, and they're your shift partner or whatever, and you're just like, "Hey, man, do you mind if I just vent to you and talk and whatever?" They're gonna listen.
Yeah.
And sometimes they might, if they're your true friend, a true brother, they're gonna support you no matter what. Whichever direction or way you go with it, they're gonna support you and make sure that you're okay.
And I think that's such why the peer support model of things. We discussed this with City of Pittsburgh Local 1 guys and the difference between peer and the CISM. And
Yeah.
now seeing and really understanding the difference, it's that importance of peer support is immeasurable. That it's such a important thing to have a peer that you can reach out to, that can very well understand those struggles because they are possibly going through the same thing. They're in the same type of work environment as you. So the peer support is key. And, you know, luckily, with the center where I work, they are all on board, and we're going to be having a peer support group
That's all.
learning sessions coming up. So thank you, work. I'm not going to mention who you guys are, but thank you, because it's a huge deal. And we just being in the center, or whether it's police, fire, EMS, or whatever, it's such an important thing to have that peer support group.
Yeah. And that was like one thing I remember when I worked there, dealing with some of those calls, and you listen to somebody on the other side of the phone having the worst day ever. And then you
Right.
hear things that are happening, and you're trying to process that, and it's like you look over at your partner next, the person, but they're on the phone, so you can't talk to them about it. And then you try to go talk to the person up at the shift commander thing, and they're busy doing 19 different things, and it's like, what? I guess I'm just gonna have to figure this one out, or just ball this one up and put it away.
In all honesty, that was my hardest transition out of EMS into dispatch was, hearing what's going on, and you can't do a damn thing about it other than go
Right.
through your protocols. And but you know
Yeah.
how we are, we're hands on. We know that
Right.
that part of the job.
And that was like one thing too that I kind of struggled with sometimes was, I would take these phone calls. And whether it was, like, before the end or, right at the end of my shift, or, um, there wasn't, like, many notes put in about it, or you didn't hear much about it afterwards, it was like, well, I wanna know what happened, like, what
Yeah.
what happened? Just why did this person have this happen, or did this person make it out okay, or whatever, it was a very that was one thing I struggled with a little bit was,
Having that
when you hung up
resolve.
that yeah, what was the end result?
Yeah. So, Richie, failing a physical agility test for a department you really wanted to work for was a major setback. How did you handle that disappointment, and what helped you move forward?
So that's where my diagnosis with ADD and ADHD came
Okay.
from, was failing that test. And I took the test the year prior, passed it flying colors, and I was really high up on the list, and uh, and I was going to be in the next group of classes, and they called me back. They're like, "Hey, you're a year out of your physical agility. We need you to come back down and take it." I said, "Awesome, cool." Did some prep work to it. Um, I remember the first time I took it because they give you 3 tries, and I was like, "Oh, man." I mean, the stair mill of the CPAC kills everybody. Like, that's the hardest part of that test is the stair climb. And, I remember doing that, and I was like, "Okay." Every time that's the part I failed on. Every time I failed that part of it, I was like 20 seconds, 10 seconds, or 15 seconds away from finishing it, where I would have been good. And that was the hardest thing about it, was like I was so close to being done with it. And the first time, I was just truly like, I didn't want to hurt myself. So I stepped off, and I was like, okay, I know I have 2 more times. I know what I need to work on. I need to, do some leg stuff and prepare a little bit more. And luckily, I still had my stuff from my personal trainer that I saw previously, and I started doing a lot of that stuff. And the second time I went back in, I actually did hit legs a little too hard a couple of days prior. And I remember walking in there, and I was like, I could barely right now. And you're throw 75 pounds on me to go climb a stair mill for 3.5 minutes. I was like, this is gonna be rough. And I remember like I just hit that point to where I didn't know what my time was, and I didn't know how much longer I had to be on there, but I was starting to feel things in my legs that I didn't want to hurt myself type deal. Like I didn't want to, all of a sudden blow my like quad out, or, calf, or whatever. So I was like, you know, I stepped off again and they're like, "You had 15 seconds." I was like, "Man, I could have just climbed like 5 more steps, and that would have been good." But I didn't want to push it and hurt myself, because then I had to look at the aspect of, well, I hurt myself here, and now I can't go to work,
Sure.
and I have to take off work there. You know, how's this going to affect me? type deal. And then the last time I took it, um, I ended up like misstepping and I slid off with 10 seconds left. And just that letdown of like, you have two people kind of talking to you at the same time and kind of like letting you know your 10-second warning, and then you have a proctor with you and stuff like that, and two people talked at the same time, and I was just in the zone and I didn't know like where to look and what to do, and that kind of just like threw me unbalanced a little bit, and I misstepped and I slid right off, and I was so mad. I was like, I was there, like, and I was like what the heck, and afterwards, I mean, walking out of there, I was so just disappointed with myself and upset, and I was so close, and if I would have passed that, I would have moved on. Who know? I couldn't tell you if I would have got hired or not, but I was there. I was in that part. I was pretty high up on the list, and just to know that it was a letdown like that, and I let myself down like that was really hard, and I was really, really hard on myself, and that's where my unmotivation and like bitterness and just everything came from. Was I just was having a hard time dealing with that failure of myself, and then finally that's where it snapped, and it was just like I needed to figure it out.
It's how it is with me. I'm my own worst enemy. I
Right.
worst critic, worst everything. That's I don't know why, but
Yeah.
it just is. It's how my brain's
Yeah.
wired.
And that was and like and even going to the test, I like outlook on it wasn't great either. It was just like I couldn't get motivated to be there.
Yeah.
I could listen to the most hardcore song or watch the most motivational video ever, and it was like it wasn't even touching my self-doubt, and I just like couldn't get myself in the right mental space of it. But then like looking back after that, I mean, it was a blessing in a disguise. Because if I didn't have that happen, then I would have never been to where I'm at now, in understanding that I had ADHD and ADD or whatever, and that was a lot of my problems. And it led to different things, and finding that out just made me 10 times better.
Sure
Gave
did.
me different outlooks and views and different things that I do, and just made me more positive, and now that I understand it and I've read some books about it and about the brain and stuff like that and how to get through that stuff, it's like now I was like, you know, I'm ready to go. Like
Now you
I'm
get
gonna
it,
take
and
this
now
test
you know.
again. Yeah.
Now you know how you need to approach things.
And so it was a blessing in disguise. Yeah, I didn't get the outcome that I wanted, but I took it as a learning once I kind of got myself out of the funk. I hit that point, and that's where I gained like the 10, 15 pounds. I was just mad and angry and just like not at people, just at myself. Like I just, I would just come into work and just be like, man,
Or
I'm
over it
just so mad.
started.
Yeah, it was like, it was hard.
So, Richie, a few more, okay? And we're going to close it up here. So, coping with stress is a huge part of our jobs. What struggles have helped you manage the stress and challenges that you face?
So one of the big things that I work on now is, especially with work, and we get into these stressful situations, calls and stuff like that, is the afterwards. Is, okay, how do you process what happened and how do you get better from that? And with work, after every difficult call or incident, I like to kind of just do like a little self-reflect, sit back and think, okay, what went well, what didn't go well, and how do we get better? What could we have done to get better, and how do we implement that or improve that? And that really changed the way that I look at difficult calls, where I wouldn't say they don't affect me, but it's the point of where I'm learning something that can make me better so the next person has that chance of having a positive outcome. And that's how I deal with a lot of stress at work, in calls at work. And then just like the normal wear and tear stress that we deal with, I like to get outside and walk do some push-ups. After every call, I do about 10 to 15 push-ups, or I try to at least, and just blow off like that steam of that call that you had, whether it was to you not stressful or was stressful. And um, I just try to do like some push-ups, maybe some squats or something like that. And at the end of the day, it makes you a little bit stronger, and but it just helps you kind of just blow off that like energy that that we built up, because the bells went off, so now you're already firing on all cylinders at 2,000 RPM, so you're ready to go. Like, it just kind of helps blow off all that.
So if someone listening is struggling with their mental health, what advice would you give them?
One, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay. And if you find that you're not working well with the person that you're talking to, try to find somebody else. Go to another person, another doctor, or get a second opinion. Trust the process. It sometimes when they lay certain medical routes out in front of you of which way they want to go, it could seem it can seem a lot and very stressful and stuff like that, but you just have to trust the process, follow it, and follow through with it. And if that's not working and you are not having that good uh, cohesion with your doctor or therapist or psychiatrist, and get a second opinion. That's what I did. That second opinion was a game changer. I was able to find somebody that, one, listened to me, gave me good factual information and then research, and made me trust the process and trust everything that we were doing.
So, Richie, looking back at your journey, what's one thing you wish you had known about mental health when you first started your career?
Um, I wish the one thing I would have known was that back then I was able to see the future of knowing that it's just a stigma. It's just something out there that we as first responders turned into kind of like this negative thing, but it's okay for us to go get help, the positive behind that, and staying positive behind it. Because I do recall sometimes where I think growing up that, or in the fire service, or when I first started off, was um I learned the help, you just got to suck it up, buttercup, you'll be okay. Um, or you just don't talk about it type deal. You just have to deal with it. And seeing the negatives behind people that try to do that and not go get help, definitely changed my look on it, that I wish I would have known back then.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Because
I mean, that was like, okay.
I came into Ross, when the old guard was still pretty much there, and and that's how it was. You just sort of didn't talk about it, and you moved
Right.
on.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's crazy because, how many people could we have got to or touched to make it better? How many? I mean, very first time I dealt with anything like that was when we lost Bomba. Um, and that was hard. When you live in a firehouse with somebody for, I think 2.5, 3 years, and then you see that happen, and you're just like, what, processing that, and it was like, wow,
Yeah.
like it was hard. And but then I wish, what I knew now, I wish I was able to go back in time and give that to him. And same with Mikey McQuillan, working with the guy in 911 for 2.5 years, and the bubbly, funny personality guy that he was, and then have him do that. And it was just like, man, I wish I would have, you know, sometimes kept in touch, or, been like, hey, there's resources out there to help you.
Yeah.
Type deal. So I had to take that drastic turn.
And before we wrap it up, brother, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah. For people that are trying to get into the fire service, whether it's a career or paramedic and stuff like that, it's one of those things that it's not an easy profession to get into, but it's a very rewarding profession to get into. And same thing. You just kind of got to trust the process and put forth the hard effort. And I mean, this is one of the best jobs in the world. You may not like where you work at, what department and what not, but at the end of the day, I get to say like, I'm a career fireman. I might not be able to get to go to a fire every day or do crazy stuff, but I still get to do what I raise my right hand and swore that I would protect the people and and do the job and love every minute of it. So, when you get in there, you love the job, learn from it, learn everything, whether it be from the best person or the worst person, you always take some type of learning token out of it and keep moving forward. Never stop learning.
Yeah, and definitely. And now that you're working a job that you always wanted to do since you were a kid, can't beat that.
Right.
Can't
No,
beat that.
can't, you know, especially when you wake up in the morning. And it was funny because I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, man, I hate waking up at 3 a.m. Hate it. I wish I could sleep in. Let's change my schedule so I can wake up at 10, and then go into work at like 1. But, when I get to the firehouse, it's a good thing. You walk in the door and you're happy to be there.
And be proud of yourself
And
for getting to where you got, man. That's awesome.
yeah, and the other thing is too, if you're down about the place that you work at and stuff like that, the grass may not be greener on the other side, but if that's something that you really want to do is change departments or careers and stuff like that, try to find the positive in it and make it work.
Yep.
That's the biggest thing too, was, when I was going through that stuff and I thought about going to a different department, I looked at some hard numbers and I said, if I got to stay positive about it and make this work. And if it happens, then it happens, and then I have to go through a whole nother process of figuring things out type deal. So
Good deal, bro.
yeah,
Richie, we really appreciate you being on. I was excited to have you on the show, and thanks for reaching out because
yeah,
it's not the easiest thing to come on here and sort of be so vulnerable about stuff that you deal with, and we
right,
totally get that.
yeah. I mean, it's just crazy because the episode that really changed or that gave me the idea of doing it was the Jeff Kelly episode. And the last time I saw Jeff was at the hospital when Taylor was down, and we talked for a good bit. And after seeing that, and we kept in touch afterwards.
Hmm.
And and I watched his episode, and I remember afterwards texting him about certain things about that he talked about in his episode, and he was like, You should do it." And that's where I kind of like started. I was like, all right,
Twist my arm a little bit more.
yeah. And then I watched the episode with Taylor and stuff like that. And I was like, all right, I think I'll do it. I think I can do it.
It was awesome. I
Yeah,
I think this was a really good episode,
yeah,
and
heck yeah,
like you said, and I say that to everyone that comes on, and I just said it is the vulnerability aspect of it, and sort of pouring out your heart and letting people know that what you go through, we all can share some sort of similar story if we're involved in public safety.
heck
And
yeah,
it's awesome. I think we have a really good platform here for everyone to come on and do such things, and we're going to continue doing it.
heck yeah. And it's a great thing because you don't see a lot of things like this out there. Where people talk about mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah, they talk about it, through a training class or in the firehouse or at their work, but you know, there's not something out here where you could kind of just be at home and be like, hey, I'm gonna listen to this guy talk for an hour about mental health and the things that he went through. But then, when you watch them, you grab tidbits of how to handle different things. And that was one of the things that, I got from the first couple episodes that y'all did was, some different ways to get through stuff, whether it was journaling or, going out and walking. I love when you do your videos, you're out walking, and you're just enjoying the outside. And I'm like, it's perfect.
That's it.
Like, is just be in the moment.
That's such being in the moment and, doing the small things that make you happy. Being out and just having the sunshine on my face when I make my little shorts. And like after
Yeah.
this, Logan and I are going out to North Park and going fishing. That's what we're doing today.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
That's what
He's
we're
definitely
gonna do.
getting big.
Dude,
Man, he's growing up.
you want to see him?
Growing up.
You want to say hi to him real quick while we're still
Yeah,
recording?
where's he at?
Yo,
Where's
Logan.
he at?
Lugs, come here, buddy. Get him on here real quick to say hi. He'll be able to be on one of the shows with Richie Nye. Hey, Lugs. Give me 1 second, okay?
Yeah, you're good.
He's like, hold on.
I gotta pause my video game, Dad.
I mean, that's what he's probably doing right now. He's like, I'll probably play some games before we go fishing. But that's his plan. He's actually going to the Pennsylvania State Police Camp Cadet here next month, which is freaking amazing. So
Yeah.
he's going to do that. It's like a week-long stay-over camp where they learn a lot of PT, wake up in the middle of the night, get yelled at a bit, but he's going to love it.
Right. Drill instructors come in banging pots and pans.
That's what they'll be doing. That's what they'll be doing. I don't know where he's at. Come on, buddy. Other than that, man, how are things?
They're good. They're good. I've just been trying to enjoy the warm weather. That's hopefully not raining weather.
Yeah. Oh, here he comes. Come here, bud. Want to say hi? Say hi to Richie Nye. Come on in.
Man,
You're in.
On in there. What's up, buddy? Going on.
it's
Want
glitchy.
to say hi to him real quick?
Yeah, sure.
There we go.
Hi.
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Good.
Good. Heck yeah. How old are you now?
12.
12.
I'm
Yeah.
12.
What 12?
It's crazy. 12 years old.
About
He's
to be
taller than me
teenage
now.
dad. Yeah. I saw that one picture. I was like, oh, man. Because then I still have the picture of all of us when we gave him that fire helmet at Berkeley.
Mhm.
I gave Wes, and I think, was it Brandon? Was it your Uncle Brandon? Yeah, I think we're all.
I think,
it
yeah.
was like one of your birthday parties. Yeah. That picture popped up a while back. I was like, oh, man, look at that. Look at that throwback. Well, you enjoyed fishing today.
Yeah.
I'm going fishing.
Enjoy,
I'm excited.
Heck yeah. I can't hear
Enjoy
anything you're
time.
saying, so. All
yeah, enjoy time with your pops.
right.
All
Let's see
right.
him real quick.
You sure you want this?
There we go. All right, Richie Nye. Brother, I
All right, brother.
appreciate you, man.
Yeah, no problem, man. Take care. Have fun.
Heck yeah, you too. You have the day off today?
No, I'm actually going into overtime tonight.
Make that
My
money.
last little bit of overtime before I go on vacation.
Well, if I don't talk to you before then, enjoy vacation. Be safe.
All right, brother.
All
Take
right,
care.
brother. We'll see you guys later.